I'm Caleb Giddings with Taurus USA, and today we're going to take a look at 2 methods to bore sight your Taurus Expedition rifle. Now, why would we bore sight a rifle? Well, I don't know about you, but ammo is expensive and I don't like wasting it. And there's nothing that irritates me more than going out and trying to zero a rifle or a handgun or something like that and spending more time and ammo than I need to do to actually get a good zero dialed in. So we want to bore sight a rifle so that when we actually go out to crack live rounds at paper, we're at least on paper for our first group, and we can have an idea of where to start to actually zero the rifle. The first bore sighting technique that we'll talk about is one that your grandfather and your dad and people have been using for generations to get these rifles on paper, and it's really, really simple. What I'm going to do is the first part is I'm just going to pull the bolt out of the gun. Why would we pull the bolt out of the gun? Well, so I can see down the barrel. Why would we see down the barrel? Because that's where the bore is. So to perform this technique, what I would do is I would pull the bolt out of the gun, and in a rest or on a bench or something like this, I would then look down the barrel. And I'm going to look down the barrel and I'm going to align the center of kind of the hole that I see through with my eye with the center of my target. You know, like that James Bond shot where you see through the rifling of the gun. That's kind of what it's going to look like, is I'm going to have this centered up on the center mass of whatever it is that I'm aiming at. Then I'm going to make sure without moving the rifle. This is the key part, and this is where something like this Real Avid gun vise comes in very, very handy for bore sighting, is I don't want to move the rifle, because once I have the rifle locked in, looking through the bore on the center of the target, I'm going to dial my optic so that the crosshairs land on the center of the target. So again, I'm looking through this, I get that lined up, I isolate the rifle, I lock it down, whether it's in a vise or on a bag or something, and then I go and I look through my optic and I dial my optic so that it's lined up on the exact same spot that I was looking at through the actual barrel. That is a very old school method of bore sighting. It's been used for years and years and years. It's basically been used for as long as we've been putting magnified optics on bolt action rifles, and it works pretty good to get you at least on paper at 25 meters. But then the problem is you probably will need to shoot a confirmation group at 25 just to know that you're sort of in the ballpark. And that is maybe more rounds than I want to spend, right? So what you can do instead of a traditional bore sight zero is use a tool like the Real Avid laser bore sighter. Laser bore sighting is great because it allows me to get a more accurate baseline than I would get by just looking down the barrel. But because the bolt's in the gun and we want to make sure that we're being safe, we're going to go ahead and insert this chamber flag in here while we do the bore sighting process. Now I'm going to drop the rifle down a little bit so that it's more level. And we're going to go from here. With the Real Avid bore sighting tool, I can actually just attach it to the front of the rifle's muzzle. So with the Taurus Expedition, instead of having to shoot a laser through the barrel like you used to with traditional old school bore sighting methods, you can just use the magnet in the end of the Real Avid tool and roughly line it up so it's concentric with the end of the Expedition's barrel. Now, to use the Real Avid tool, you're going to want to set this reflective card out at 25 yards. The reason why you want to use this reflective card is if you're shooting this in outdoor conditions and not in a studio, that laser will be more difficult to see at 25 yards. So using this reflective card at your 25-yard line will allow you to get a much more precise indicator of where the rifle is going to hit. Then we just turn the laser on and aim it at our reflective card, which again, outside of the studio, would be at 25 yards. This is the easy part. Once we do that, we once again want to isolate the rifle in the bench, right? So we want to use a tool like this to isolate the Taurus Expedition, make sure that it is not moving around, and then we can go ahead and dial our optic so that the center of the crosshairs matches up to where the dot is on the card. So if the dot's right here in the center of the card, we're going to dial the crosshairs right to that location. If the dot isn't centered, we're still going to dial the crosshairs to the dot because we're not worried about where the card actually is in space. We're worried about making sure that the bore and the optic are pointing at the same area. Now, with a 25-yard or 25-meter laser bore sight zero like this, some people will want to shoot a confirmation group to make sure that they're still on paper. I would recommend shooting maybe 1 round or 2 if you need to get the gun warm. But what I would much rather do is just shoot that 1 confirmation round and then go out and start shooting my groups to 0. Depending on what 0 you've chosen for your gun, whether it's a 50-200 or a 100-300 or something like that, you may want to spend a little bit more time tightening up this bore sight so that you're not wasting ammo during the 0 phase. Zeroing is critically important with a rifle like the Taurus Expedition. Its sub-MOA accuracy, thanks to the cold hammer forged barrel, mean that if you dial a really good 0 on this gun, you're going to hit what you're aiming at in the field.